went for a hospital scan and they were like, we need to get these babies out basically tonight. And I was like, tonight? Like, no. I'm going to try and do this video quickly because the twins are sleeping, and this is like one of the few occasions where I actually have got the mental capacity right now to do a video and get my thoughts out there. Okay, so I'll start from when I found out I was pregnant. So that was a bit of a... Hi guys, welcome back for another video. So I tried to make this video without these two making an appearance, but evidently they're not going to allow that to happen. Okay, so this is my birth story video, and let's hope that we don't get too many interruptions. So let's fast forward or rewind back to when I found out I was pregnant. So I had miscarried about 4 months before I was pregnant, and we were trying for, you know, a child, so it wasn't like it was a surprise. What was the surprise was the fact that we were having twins. Essentially, when I miscarried the first time round, I actually had a pretty miserable pregnancy. I mean, I was 9 weeks pregnant when I miscarried, which was quite a horrific experience, which I might talk about in another video, and how the maternity provision for women who are suffering miscarriages is an absolute joke when it comes to the NHS and the service and care that you receive. But that's by the by. As I said, I'll talk about it in another video. So I was actually really miserable with that pregnancy, and you know, there was a part of me that thought, because I was miserable and like unhappy that I was pregnant, even though we were trying to get pregnant, but I miscarried. And then I felt like, is it because I hated, I've got problems with reflux, so you know, excuse the occasional appearance of vomit. Anyway, so I in my head I thought, like, you know, did I wish that pregnancy away because I was so miserable while pregnant? Obviously that doesn't make any sense, but you know, at the time it was kind of like that was what was in my mind. Then forward 4 months after that, I then found out I was pregnant. So we were like, yay. And that time I was a little bit more optimistic about it, but I think because at the time my daughter was like 2 years and like 4 months, there or thereabouts, and she was like a handful. She'd gone from that stage of being like, you know, a baby where you could kind of like put her in an area where she would play by herself, to really a very demanding toddler. And so I think I had that in my mind when I was kind of like sort of not happy about being pregnant, because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to cope with, you know, a child that requires so much attention and then a second child. So maybe that was all in the back of my mind. Anyway, so then we found out we were pregnant with twins, and you know, it was like, what the fuck? What the hell? This is not what we planned for. How the hell are we going to afford 3 children? Because we've literally just moved into this house, we've doubled our mortgage, we've, you know, designated money to do the house up, and we don't have spare cash to, you know, have 3 children. So yeah, that was all sort of running around in my mind. And then of course, you know, aside from the financial challenge was you know, the physical demands of like 3 children, right? So I was, again, really miserable through that pregnancy, and I was mostly miserable because physically the impact on me was like pretty much immediate. You know, when I was pregnant with Faith, I virtually had no morning sickness. I was never like ill. I had loads of energy. It was like, you know, like when people would talk about, oh, I'm really tired and I feel like I want to be sick all the time, I never experienced any of that when I was pregnant. Like I felt like Superwoman when I was pregnant with Faith. So this pregnancy, very similar to the one prior where I miscarried, I was just physically like impacted immediately, because I felt like, you know, first of all, I had terrible constipation. I had like morning sickness, but it was like I would never actually like vomit, but I just always was like on the verge of retching. My stomach was like constantly churning, and it like I'd wake up in the morning and feel like I'd eaten like a full meal. I was physically exhausted. and just that, like all of those changes just made me really, really miserable. So, you know, when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, okay, well, okay, fine, let's see how this goes, because, you know, like I said, I miscarried previously, so I was, in my mind was like Googling, well, not in my mind, I actually Googled all these stats on like, you know, pregnancy loss, and, you know, what's the likelihood of like disability, you know, chromosomal abnormalities, let's say. And, you know, and also because, you know, I'm like over 40, so I was like, I'm an old woman, having twins, and, you know, the miscarriage rates for twins are really high already, and then I'm old and also overweight, right? So all these like factors, I was like, it's likely I probably won't carry to term. Obviously, as you can see, I did, but all the while I was thinking I probably won't carry to term, I won't carry to term. And I just had all these negative thoughts in my head about just being pregnant. And then it turned out that by getting this this pill called Omozrapel, which is like a gastroenteritis pill, it actually made a massive difference, because then I also had blood tests, so that told me that I had really low iron, and I was taking my multivitamins, but I kind of stopped taking them because they, first of all, the tablets are huge and they made me feel really sick. So I kind of wasn't taking them as often. So, you know, I was then also scared that maybe, you know, by not taking enough folic acid, maybe I, like, you know, contributed to like some, you know, chromosomal issues. Obviously, I know that's not how it works, but at the time, you know, I had all these negative thoughts in my head. Anyway, so then finally, you know, I chose my hospital, and I gave birth at not Queen Charlotte, Chelsea. That's where I gave birth the first time round. It was University of West Middlesex, which is in Twickenham, and that's where I gave birth. And Twickenham is just, I guess you'd call it Greater London, but to me, it's not really London. It's the outer suburbs of London. And yeah, so I went there for all my antenatal care, and I must say I'm really, really impressed by the staff and the care there. I was treated so well, and, you know, I can't say anything negative about, well, I can say something negative, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But for the most part, I would say service was definitely 8 out of 10 there. So then, with all my antenatal appointments at that hospital, I came across, and this is why representation really matters, because I'm not sure if you were aware of the stats, but like black women are 5 times more likely to die in childbirth, or to die after postnatally, than white women. So that was always a concern of mine, and in choosing that hospital, because it had better health outcomes, and, you know, the surveys from people were just like much better, right? So I had a black doctor who happened to be a fellow Ghanaian, so I was super happy to have her as my doctor, and she really was really concerned about my pregnancy, really took all my concerns seriously. She was like, you know, giving me all the best advice on, you know, basically, because I wanted to do a vaginal birth, and she was like, you're not an ideal candidate for vaginal birth. So yeah, kind of, you know, really think about it. Anyway, so she arranged like lots more monitoring of me. I think naturally when you have twins, and yeah, I think when you have twins, you have much more monitoring. So I had lots of monitoring all the way throughout my pregnancy. She's the one that picked up the concern around Amy not growing. So when Amy was born, she was a lot smaller. You and your reflux, young lady, is gross. How many outfits do we have to change? And in the end, what happened was I was 33, 34 weeks, and she basically said, we need to think about getting these twins out sooner rather than later. And so I finished work at 37 weeks on the Friday. I went for a hospital scan, and they were like, we need to get these babies out basically tonight. And I was like, tonight? Like, no. Well, I didn't say no, but I was like, really? You know, and they were like, okay, well, let's take you for extra monitoring, and then we'll make a decision from there. So the monitoring came back fine, but not good enough for them to be like, okay, you can go another week. So then I was then booked in for a C-section on the Saturday. So I had my C-section, and that experience was not one I want to repeat, because one, I lost like, I think over 2 liters of blood. My iron was already low as it was, so that didn't help. And the reason I lost so much blood was because I had a lot of scar tissue from the first C-section, and they were basically like, I could hear them saying, you know, the bleeding's not under control. Babies are fine, but the bleeding's not under control. But I could hear that sort of in the distance, and all I could hear was Maya screaming her head off, and I couldn't hear Amy. So I said to Ross, where's the other baby? Because I couldn't hear her, and he said, oh, she's in the corner. So he did bring Maya to me, and you know, I have one picture with her from when she was born, but I don't have a picture with Amy. Amy was in the other corner, because there was just quite a lot of commotion going on, because I then started to vomit quite violently, and apparently it was because of this procedure where they had to remove my uterus, which is what the surgeons told me later on. So the surgeons came and gave me a debrief, and essentially I lost a lot of blood. I had very bad scar tissue from the previous C-section, and because of that they had to remove my uterus. So are you gonna let me finish the story, young lady? Yeah, so and basically they said, don't have any more children because your uterus is just not, it's not going to be a good outcome. Your uterus could rupture, and if you insist on having more children, then make sure you wait until you're fully healed, so like a full year after. But I really recommend don't have any more children. I was like, believe me, girl, ain't no more children coming out of here. This uterus is closed for business, closed down for sale, okay? Like literally out of business, out of service, out of business, closed. I don't know how else to say that. Anyway, so then they wheeled me to the recovery area, and I was still kind of like suffering the effects of all the medication they gave me, because they kept on pumping me with lots of pain medication, and also giving me anti-sickness medication, because, you know, like I said, I was violently sick on the operating table. Yeah, so once I came out of the operating theatre and into the recovery area, I started to like violently shake. Yes, what's the matter? I started to violently shake from, I guess, the effects of the medication. So I was like vomiting, and also just shaking, like I was having seizures. And I just felt so cold, like just freezing cold, like just, I don't know how to describe this cold feeling. It's like there was ice inside my veins, yeah? Like my heart, my lungs, everything was like just full of ice. That's what it felt like. And they kept on like wrapping blankets around me to try and warm me up. You know, obviously I wasn't externally cold, but it was the effects of this medication that was making me feel cold. So they were like putting blankets on me, like they had at one point this sort of like blower machine which like pumps out like hot air, and then underneath, basically they wrapped me in this type of plastic and then put the this blower machine in to like blow hot air in, and I was still like just literally just violently shaking on the table. And then eventually it's also like the memories are just sort of like, I probably should have done this sooner, but I'm now trying to remember, and just some of the memory is gone. But yeah, so they're debriefing me about what happened on the operation, and this is one thing I think they shouldn't really do, is to debrief you immediately after you've had your C-section. And I understand, you know, they want to like tell you as it's fresh, but like there were so many questions that I wanted to ask afterwards, and obviously your surgeon is then gone, but you know, you're being told all this information when you're kind of like half delirious, and you know, the adrenaline that, you know, you have to use to get through the operation, plus, you know, the medication is all making you groggy, so it's very hard to like ask the like appropriate questions. So when they're like, do you have any questions, you're like, well, like if I did have any questions, it was like one, but it was only afterwards that I had so many questions, like, why did you remove my uterus? Like, what was the reason for that? And you know, is it fully repaired? Is it fully functional? I don't know. I mean, frankly, I don't really care because I don't intend to have any more children, as I said. But it would be nice to have had the opportunity to ask the surgeon afterwards. Anyway, so I get wheeled into like the you know, my private room, and I'm really thankful that I had a private room, because I remember one of the reasons I went to Queen Charlotte and Chelsea for my first birth was because you get a private room. And those private rooms are not cheap, so it was like £625 pounds a night. And I was there for 2 nights. The best £625, or rather £1,250 I've ever spent, to be perfectly honest. It was basically the equivalent of going on holiday for me, or rather the cost of going on holiday, because it just meant that I had like one-on-one care, the nurses looked after me, and it was quite similar in this instance, that I had a private room. But the only difference is that because it's an NHS private room, so it's not like I didn't pay for it. It meant that I didn't have, you know, the sort of like one-on-one care. Like nobody was coming to basically take my child and feed my child. I had to get off the recovery table and feed my child by myself.
The bed.
And your partner wasn't allowed to stay in the room with you, which is another thing that I wish they had
lower the bed.
You know, with a bed, or like, you know, something where the partner could stay. And
this bit doesn't really work very well, I find.
Yes.
To lift up your feet.
Yeah, so I wish they had, you know, offered that as a provision, but otherwise, the care and attention that I received from the staff was, you know, really, really good. They all just kept on coming in and checking on me, but that is where my complaint starts, because while it's great that everybody was checking on me and checking my vitals and all the rest of that, in fact, all they were doing was checking my vitals and making sure that I was physically okay. No one was coming in to like help me feed these two, which I would have like really appreciated, because you know, getting off that bed, and I know they want you to be mobile, but getting off the bed was just, it was, I wouldn't say it was painful, but it was like, you know, when, I don't know, it's like somebody's been punching at your muscles, you know, like let's say you've run a marathon and your muscles are really sore, or you haven't been to the gym in like forever, and so all your muscles are really sore. That's what it was like. So getting off that bed and, you know, picking up the twins and feeding them was just really a lot of like, it was a lot of work. But the room itself, very nice. It had an ensuite, so I was happy with that, you know, I didn't have to share facilities with other women, because that's one of the things I never wanted, was to share a ward, or to be on the ward with other women. And you know, this is not to be snobby, but it's just I just don't want to hear other people's conversations, you know, because basically all you have is like a thin curtain between you and the next person in their bed, so you hear all their conversation, they can hear your conversation. I never wanted to have that experience. And I'm thankful that I didn't have that experience as a result of having that private room. The staff were great. They, you know, also I'm thankful to the, I think the head midwife, who allowed me to stay, you know, 3 more days longer than I was supposed to, because they discharge you after 2 days normally. And meanwhile, our house was being refurbished, and of course this builder was not on time. So I told him, I kind of told him, look, I'm going to be giving birth in like 2 or 3 weeks. You need to have this house ready. And all the while, he's promising me, Amy, what is the matter? We've fed you, you've been fed, you've been burped, okay? So I need you to just chill, okay? Yeah, so this builder was supposed to have like finished our house refurbishment. Amy, what is your problem? Explain. What's the problem? What's the problem? See, even your sister's like not understanding what your problem is. Yeah, so this builder was supposed to have finished our house like, you know, 2 months prior, and he hadn't. So all the while he's telling me, oh, it'll be ready before you give birth, it'll be ready before you give birth. And I told him I was giving birth in September and actually gave birth in October, thinking that, you know, if I give him the September timeline and he's like over by maybe a couple of weeks, it's not too bad. In the end, he was like, it was 6 weeks after I gave birth before we finally moved in. And it was literally a couple of weeks before Christmas, before we moved in. This guy just, and it's still not finished. So yeah, anyway, so I said to the nurse that our house has been refurbished. I think the builder should be done in a couple of days. So can I stay a bit longer? And obviously not realising that the builder was nowhere near finished, because I remember Ross telling me that it's not going to be finished, and the builder kept on reassuring us that, you know, oh, it'll be done, like give me like, it'll be done in like 3 days, it'll be done in 4 days, you know. And each time the timeline kept on slipping to the point where I had the baby, and it was 6 weeks later, and he was still in the house, not finished. Anyway, so we're finally in. But, you know, all the while to say, despite the fact that I was quite negative about this pregnancy, I kept on, you know, in some ways thinking that these two wouldn't make it, and they did, and I'm so grateful to God for their lives. It is extremely challenging. When people talk about, you know, I have to, you know, take my hat off to people who have multiple and are able to make videos on a regular basis, because honestly, this is hard work. There's no real break from these two unless, you know, I have family come over, and that's when I get a break. But otherwise, it's like, it is constant and relentless. Like, I take them out, we come back, and within 10 minutes they're awake. Like, I just don't get it. I can never get a break from them, and then cap it off, they don't sleep at night. So it's literally relentless. And as much as I love you both, all right? I really just can't wait to go back to work, so that I don't have to look after children. I'm not one of these women who would ever have given up their job to be a stay-at-home mum. That's just not me. Amy, I love you. See, this is precisely why I want to go back to work, because somebody else can deal with this, you know? Someone else I pay to deal with this can handle you two. Yeah, so that's yeah, I just can't wait to go back to work. The only reason I'm not at work is because I'm getting paid to be at home. But as soon as you know, they stop paying me, I'm going back to work. By which point these guys will be like 8-9 months. So that's the intention, and they're now 5 months. So I've got another, you know, 2 to 3 months before I go back to work. Yeah, so that's my birth story. I will try and make more content when I get a chance. It likely probably will be on the go, because, you know, these two, yeah, as you can see, this is my life, and I'm lucky that Faith is not here, because it literally is like a zoo in here with the 3 kids. And I'm sure it will get better, because that's what lots of people say. Once they're back when they're in school, you know, you won't have as much challenge of dealing with them. But yeah, anyway. So as you can see, this is my life. Grateful to God for their life, but it's a lot of work. All right. Okay. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope to see you for the next video. Bye.